From the UCLA Labor Center and KPFK, you're listening to Rework. I'm Stephanie Ratapper.
And I'm Saba Wahid.
So who was your favorite teacher in high school?
Mrs. Marshall. I didn't even need to think twice about that. She was my high school English teacher. Because of her, I developed my love for literature and storytelling. I felt more myself in her class than I did anywhere else in school. And I think that's true for most of us. We have that unforgettable teacher that sets us on our life's trajectory.
Right, and most of the time we know even our most favorite teachers just inside the classroom. So what happens when we learn what they're going through outside the classroom? In this week's episode of Rework, UCLA student Tyler Millis uncovers what happened to his favorite teacher in the 4 years since he last saw him.
There I was, just browsing Facebook when I happened across an article. It was posted not once, not twice, but numerous times all the way down my newsfeed. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but then I realized it was written by DJ Cook, my favorite high school teacher, and I decided to click on it.
Living in a converted garage with a master's degree. I am suffocated by student loan debt. I am 36 years old, I'm employed, and I live slightly above the poverty line.
As I continued to read, I found myself more and more upset. I had known that Mr. Cook had stopped teaching in the city where I grew up, but I couldn't understand how he could be living in poverty. I decided to reach out to him to see if he would talk about his experiences, and I hadn't even seen him in years.
So I'm going to turn so I can actually look at you when I'm talking to you.
Actually, that makes sense. That'd be nice.
Staring at my coffee cup the whole time here. Both first-timers.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start off. I mean, you already mentioned it kind of briefly, but how exactly did you get that, to that point where you decided that you wanted to teach? Like, what led up to that? I was surprised to learn that he didn't find his calling until much later in life. He graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2000 as a business major and started a career in the entertainment industry, but it didn't stick. He decided to travel through Europe with some friends from college, and during that trip, something clicked.
When I was in London, we took the Channel down to France, and then we backtracked up to the Normandy invasions, and my grandfather was at that beach. And he never spoke about it in his entire life, ever. And he sat down with my mom, and for one time in his life, he told her every single graphic detail of that day, and I only got the filter of that information. And it was that empowering on me that from that point forward, standing in those locations where a lot of the famous American parts of World War II were, really inspired me to want to do that.
In that moment, standing on the beach in Normandy, the history of World War II became more than just history. It was a window to his grandfather's life, and it was real. This was miles away from his own high school experience, where he always felt bored waiting for something to happen. That's when he realized he wanted to make history that real and that interesting for others as well, and he decided to teach. Do you remember how you taught us about D-Day and the beach?
Absolutely. I mean, I always, on every single day, if I wanted to make sure I got one thing right, I wanted to always pretend I was sitting in a chair, listening and participating in what I was doing. And if I was bored with that, then I wanted to do something else. For this particular lesson, it was the esteemed, coveted day where I was going to bring in Call of Duty.
Through the unmatched heroism of the 1st Infantry Division, Allied forces were able to overpower Axis troops at Jela and Troina. Even the tanks of the mighty Hermann Goering Division were no match for one of the most accomplished American fighting units of World War II.
We gotta protect those Reagan's boats! Take these! Direct the mortar fire! Take out those bunkers on the cliff face!
And a lot of people immediately dismiss video games. Nope, video games, we don't like them. But if you use certain aspects effectively, it could be very engaging. And the thing about, some of those video games is they've gone to another level where I have pictures from the actual site of the Normandy invasion on the cliffs with the Army Rangers from Pointe du Hoc. I have pictures of the exact locations that they replicated on the games and the exact mission they replicated. And I introduced that to the game, and I didn't see any harm as to it being an engaging thing, especially for 15-year-old boys at the time. And then people were fighting over who was going to get to go through this mission, and it was an incredibly engaging mission, and I don't think any one of those kids forgot that lesson.
I definitely remember that lesson. I never had a teacher before who seemed to understand us so well. He made us feel comfortable and had us learn by doing. In his class, it was impossible to tune out or fall asleep. Mr. Cook always found a way to make the lessons new and unpredictable, and taught them with an insane level of energy. Another activity we did was to introduce us to DBQs, document-based questions. They are difficult essay prompts where we are required to synthesize information from a number of documents into an argument to answer the question.
It's essentially what, in a much more complicated sense, in a law class, they'd teach you how to do something like that, how to deconstruct a case and make sure there's no holes in your arguments. It's about taking things apart and putting it together in the right order. So in order to introduce that type of writing style, the day that they come in the class for that one, I take all the old-style desks and I stack them to the ceiling, and I tangle them up as much as I can. And as soon as the bell rings when they walk in, I put 5 minutes on the timer, I put my feet up on the desk, and I act like I'm reading something for effect, and all it says on the board is solve the problem. So at first they don't know what the problem is, they go to the board, they see there's a seating chart, they see all their names on the seating chart, they start taking it apart. I've never had a class not get it done in 5 minutes. And then we have some kind of visual and kinesthetic exercise to reflect on whenever we're unpacking a DBQ.
Sometimes his lessons got a little too real. During our World War I unit, Mr. Cook brought in a fog machine and sound effects and had us turn over the desks to recreate trench warfare. But before we could do that, we had to fully understand the gravity of going over the top, as they say. It's that moment when you know you're going to face certain death when you come out of the trenches. He had us write letters to our parents telling them what we were about to do. Unfortunately, one girl didn't quite remember her vocabulary.
She got some of the terminology wrong and some of the statistics wrong, and also didn't put her name on it and didn't say this is Mr. Cook's class. And she wrote a letter that essentially said something to the extent of, I'm going over the edge and I don't think I'm going to make it. And what she was trying to say is I'm about to go over the top in one of our vocab terms. So she leaves this I don't think I'm going to make it note on her bed at home, and her parents find it. And they think it's a full-blown suicide note. So they drive down as fast as they can to the school. They're immediately bawling in the office. An administrator comes very in a worried fashion to my classroom, calls this student out. The student sees the people her parents crying. She starts crying. Nobody knows why everybody's crying. They show her the note, and then they realize that it was activity I had them do. So I had some questions to answer after that one.
At the time, Mr. Cook was a brand new teacher at Oak Park High School, the only high school in my hometown. It's one of the top-rated public schools in Southern California, and there's even a lottery for out-of-district kids to get in. People move from all over the region to try and have their kids attend. That's what my parents did. For people who are unfamiliar with Oak Park, it's a wealthy suburb directly across the northern border of Los Angeles County. We lived in one of the apartment complexes wedged right between the high and middle schools, and the cost of living was ridiculously high. Both of my parents worked hard and struggled to keep us in the city. For Mr. Cook, it was not much different. So while my classmates and I were going from class to class, Mr. Cook began to realize how precarious his job really was.
The first year, I was laid off, and that was pretty scary. By the end of that school year in which I was laid off, because in California they legally have to tell you by March 1st, I believe it is, March 1st. By the end of the school year, at least, they said, we're going to bring you back. So it was only 3 months of worry for that time period. Second year, again. Now, the problem in Oak Park was it was such a wealthy community that no new families were moving to it. So every year, our enrollment got less and less. And then our superintendent expanded who could come into our district to try and sustain the teachers, and they did. And I got retained again, second year. Third year, same thing. Third year was the least scary layoff I had because they basically said, as they were handing me the layoff, this is a formality. Then, my fourth year at Oak Park, I finally got everything in place. I got tenure. I got my foot in the door to school. I was well respected. I had a good reputation. I was teaching AP classes. Everything was great. Problem was, I was going backwards in debt, $10,000 a year for living in that community. think I lived in 6 different places when I was out there trying to manage a rent that was manageable enough to also pay off my student loans, which there was a humongous difference between my undergraduate student loans and my graduate school student loans. My undergrad ones were fairly simple. It was one payment, it was once a month, it was manageable, plus school didn't cost as much when I graduated in 2000. I think I had somewhere floating around $6,000 in student loan debt after undergrad. When I went back to school 7 years later, I accrued $36,000 just in student loans. Another 22 in credit card debt, because when you become a teacher, you have to teach for 6 months for free. The only job I could get to manage my student teaching with my, night school and everything else, the only flexible schedule I could get was working at Chili's waiting tables. So I was virtually up from 5:30 in the morning until, midnight every day for 6 straight months. And doing all that, still, I wasn't even coming halfway close enough to pay rent, have enough food to eat, do all that stuff. But I said, this is all going to be worth it. This is what the teachers do. There's been a million teachers that have done this before me. I know I'm going to be safe. And that's how I felt.
Since we were young, we were told that to be successful, we had to go to college to get a job and live the American dream. Mr. Cook felt like he had done everything right.
I was a straight A student in high school. I played 5 sports in high school. I did all the extracurriculars. I did community service. I did all the things you're supposed to do in order to get into college. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara. I went back to school, got my master's degree, said, okay, this is what everybody's done to get to the point in your life where you buy a house, you get a family, you start the American dream, whatever that cliche now is. And I decided I had to make a change if I was ever going to be able to be self-sufficient and sustainable without going into the point where, it's irreversible.
The change Mr. Cook decided to make was a drastic one. He was going to move out not only of Oak Park, but the state of California itself to Colorado. Here in Colorado, Mr. Cook hoped to teach in a place where he could afford to live and hopefully pay off his loans. He moved into a 2-unit place in Denver right below a young couple who had a story eerily similar to his.
They were an engaged couple that lived above me. They were going to get married after they graduated from law school and passed the bar. They both got out of law school, both passed the bar. They couldn't even get a job at a law firm with a law degree. And both of them when I left Denver, were making $7.50 an hour at Starbucks, trying to pay off $150,000 worth of student loan debt. And those stories are way too common these days and heartbreaking when I see it.
This couple is only one example of a fast-growing phenomenon in the United States. For the first time in the history of the world, student loan debt has surpassed credit card and auto loan debt valued at $1.3 trillion. Compounding that, $300 billion of that $1.3 trillion has been added in the last 3 years. This is largely in part due to the massive increases in college tuitions, which have increased by over 600% since 1980. And as of 2005, bankruptcy can no longer absolve you of this student loan debt. In Colorado, Mr. Cook managed to find work as a high school teacher again, but the threat of being laid off was still ever present. With Colorado not having the same layoff notification laws as California, Mr. Cook feared unemployment could come at any point in the school year.
So 2 weeks before school ended, in probably what was one of the worst weeks of my life, my house was leaking carbon monoxide, and I was told by the furnace guy that if this continued for any more time, I would have been a corpse in a bed. It made my dog sick. That next day, I went into my classroom. I'm in front of my 36 students in a class. I'm in the middle of class. The vice principal walks into class and says, "Hey, can you come over here real quick?" And he hands me a piece of paper like that. And he says, can you sign that? So I'm like, sure. As a teacher, you sign a million things all the time. But I always read things first, make sure what I'm signing. As I'm reading it, this is how I'm being informed that I'm being laid off. In front of my class, in the middle of my class, by an administrator who also, when I said, and I asked him, is this telling me what I think it is? And he goes, oh, what's it saying? And I showed him. I don't even think he knew what the document said.
Left without a job or even a place to live, Mr. Cook was at his wit's end. And then he got a call that he believed to be a saving grace. It was Oak Park High School prepared to offer him his job back if he returned to California.
I was relieved to hear from them, and I said, absolutely, I'll come back. Now, in hindsight, I should have signed on the dotted line somewhere before I packed up and moved 1,800 miles. But 5 days after being back, due to, circumstances, 2 different opportunities went away, and I found myself unemployed. Colorado rejected my unemployment, and I had 2 months of money before I was dead broke. Maxed out credit cards, dead broke, master's degree. What the hell happened to my life kind of moment, I was 2 weeks away from quite literally running out of money, running out of options, running out of hope.
Mr. Cook did end up finding a job in a very different part of LA. He started to teach at La Puente High School in a low-income neighborhood.
I teach in a heavily impoverished area now, and a lot of the kids have no hope in high school because they know that they're never leaving that community. They don't have a lot of options because even if they wanted to go to college, now it costs, it's almost prohibitive. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's hovering around somewhere where 40% of these kids, all the food they eat in the day is the breakfast and lunch they get from school. There is a firm military discipline at the school where I think there's some value to positive psychology and positive reinforcement, and only the negative gets attention at the school I teach at. You're only told what you've done wrong in some circumstances. It's never what you've done right. Whenever a student gets like a 96% and they go, oh, well, what 4% did I miss? I said, you're concentrating on the wrong part of this, equation. You got a 96%. That's outstanding.
When there's such a strong emphasis on the negative, it has real effects on students as well as on teachers.
So you have a lot of jaded students in a very jaded community with a lot of jaded teachers. And some of them, not all of them, but there are a few who have mailed it in at that point. And that's where the stereotype of the bad teacher comes in, something like that. Somebody who's like, this is a 95-minute class, here's a packet, I'll be at my desk.
When teachers mail it in, as Mr. Cook says, the district has to start cracking down. And one of the tools that they've taken to using is a new stringent curriculum that mandates specific ways that he has to teach in class. Not only does this make Mr. Cook feel limited in his ability to teach, he also feels that it makes students limited in their capacity to learn.
The way our education system's set up, if you don't get it immediately, they move on in a lot of cases. So if we extinguish that hope, it gives me hope to reignite that love of learning, because there was a time period in my life when it was extinguished. I think I was so burnt out by the time I got done with college and so ready to get into the world and make a paycheck that I think my learning portion of my brain just kind of shut off for a few years. And I think, unfortunately, some people get locked in that way forever.
Mr. Cook was dedicated to reigniting that desire to learn in his students, especially at La Puente High, where his students really needed it. He pressed ahead with creative ways to teach the curriculum, using many of the high-energy activities that he started in Oak Park. But just when he was starting to figure out the ropes, he was laid off. And for the record, that was the 6th time in 7 years.
Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Maybe sunshine and maybe rain. But as for me, I'll wait and see. And maybe it'll bring my love to me.
So Mr. Cook went back to the drawing board looking for jobs. He applied for numerous teaching jobs all throughout Southern California. He interviewed with public schools, nonprofit charter schools, and private schools. But to his surprise, the only offers he received were even lower than the pay he received before.
Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Maybe sunshine and maybe rain. But as for me,
Already living paycheck to paycheck, Mr. Cook knew he couldn't afford a pay cut without defaulting on his student loans.
It's getting to the point where I might have to choose a different profession, which would break my heart. But you kind of get what you pay for in a lot of situations. And if you really want to make the teaching profession stronger, demand it. And by demanding it, pay them a wage that would demand that. Would you want to, in any situation, go to a doctor who made $38K a year and have him do surgery on you? I mean, you get what you pay for in a lot of senses. So if you want the teaching profession to be a valuable resource, you have to make it a valuable resource, and you have to make it a priority. I would honestly be better off with job security, making $15 an hour than I do now, being laid off every single year, almost running out of money at the end of the summer every year, and only paying off the interest on my student loans and never touching the principal. I find myself getting pushed out by the profession, and it's pushing a lot of very qualified, very good people out of it. And you're getting a replacement system, which is going to be a monstrous mess before anybody realizes it.
And that's when Mr. Cook decided to write the Huffington Post piece. He read an article similar to his on the site, and at the end it said, "Submit your story." So he decided to go for it and wrote his piece that night.
I currently live in a converted garage, 500 square feet, with no heat, no air conditioning, and no kitchen. And all of that costs $900 a month. In these current economic circumstances, I've experienced the following emotions, thoughts, events, and actions. 1. My financial situation has caused a level of depression that is hard to overcome sometimes. 2. My financial situation has made it impossible to buy a home and build equity. 3. My financial situation has caused so much stress, it has inadvertently cost me 2 very important relationships. 4. I have thought about moving out of the country for good, abandoning my family, my friends, and most importantly, my debt. And 5. Worst of all, my financial situation has broken my spirit and leaves me with a sense of hopelessness most of the time. I feel like this situation is turning me into a bad person. What happened to the American dream we all strove so hard to reach? The outpouring of support after the article was written, I didn't know it was going to be as big a deal as it turned out to be. I didn't know how big it was going to be. I've been now on 2 radio shows, which is, 10 days ago, if you told me that would be insanity to me. I've been contacted by hundreds of people with similar stories. I had a woman just yesterday say, I'm in $128,000 of student loan debt. I only pay partially half of the interest that I accrue every year. But after reading your story, I want to give you a donation just so you feel better about the situation. And I wrote in response to her, the best donation you could give me is just to raise awareness about this issue, because a lot of people immediately dismiss it when they hear student loan debt because they go, I went to college, yeah. And these young kids, they complain too much. They're too busy on their smartphones and their Twitters and their Google, and it's a very ignorant thing to say and to think, because you're dismissing the issue before anybody can even explain it to you in a lot of cases. And I don't think very many people realize just how big of a problem this student loan problem is.
A lot of people in generations older than mine dismiss student debt, but what they don't realize is that this is a very different monster than we have ever dealt with before. We have a serious concentration of debt in only one generation, and we are the same generation that has to pay into Social Security, pay into Medicare, and pay into these systems in order for them to work in the future. And the way things are now, we might not be able to.
In all respects, in my very humble opinion, if you had $1.3 trillion to reintroduce right back into the economy, you're going to solve a lot of problems.
For me personally, Mr. Cook lit a fuse that had long gone out. For years, I thought I was a horrible public speaker. And then, I was given the opportunity to give my first speech in Mr. Cook's class. It was the Hi-Fi Project, a presentation my whole grade was required to do, where we researched a historical figure of our choosing. I remember back then, you really changed the way that I perceived my presentations and stuff. It was for the first time, in classes, I felt like when I went up to give a presentation, I could do something that I wasn't allowed to do in other classes, which was that I could entertain students and get a good grade for it. You would, actually give us points for making people look at you and not just reciting information.
Sure.
It wasn't about just hitting these talking points. It was about actually teaching people in a way that they want to learn and they want to hear what you have to say. So,
well, I'm incredibly flattered, and radio doesn't convey my blushing right now. But I still remember, and you get 170 students every year. But I still remember your Hi-Fi project because Tyler was incredibly smart, but also very quiet. You were so quiet all year, and then you came out and you were cracking the whole class up. with your presentation on the hi-fi. And I was like, where did this come from? I've never seen this in 36 weeks of school. And, it really kind of foreshadows why you're here today, speaking on the radio, because you have it.
And I never would have known that I had it, that ability to really speak and entertain, if it weren't for Mr. Cook. And I know he had that impact on others as well. All of your students, I'm speaking broadly, but I also think I'm speaking correctly. All of your students loved you as a teacher. I loved you as a teacher. And I just want you to know that all of us, all the students you've ever had, and all the students that you will have, want you to continue. And they want to see you continue to teach. And even if it's hard and you have to take a break, we just hope that you come back and you keep teaching. So.
Well, that is honestly probably one of the nicest things that everybody has ever said to me, and I'm close to speechless about it. I want to stay in teaching because stories like Tyler tells of the classes are what I live for. I live to see the sparks in these kids, and I live to make a difference in these classrooms and in these communities and be there as a mentor for the rest of their lives if that's the kind of relationship they would like to have. The fact that I have, Tyler sitting next to me is one of my former students, this makes my day. This makes my month. Seeing the success of the people who I've come across in my life, I take great pride in that. I take great pride in seeing it happen before my eyes over the course of 36 weeks in a school year. And then after college, if they get the rare opportunity these days to do something impactful in society, then I feel like my contribution to society is at least one more person greater than myself.
After finishing the interview, Mr. Cook gave me a hug and we said our goodbyes. And I realized something had shifted. Even though I still can't bring myself to call him by his first name, I like to think that we've become friends. And in realizing that we were no longer on separate levels, I came to understand that our struggles were connected. We usually think of teachers not getting paid enough, and we think about rising tuitions punishing the students. But these really go hand in hand, especially now that us students are becoming the teachers. And as that student debt goes up, we're losing more and more opportunities to have great teachers like Mr. Cook.
Thank you to DJ Cook for sharing his story. You can find a link to his Huffington Post article on our Facebook page at /Rework Radio. You're listening to Rework, a program of the UCLA Labor Center and KPFK. This week's show was produced by Tyler Billis, Quincy Surasmith, Stephanie Ritopper, and Saba Wahid. Music supervision by Francisco Garcia Nava. Special thanks to Henry Walton.
To find out more about the show and to catch up on previous shows, visit our website at reworkradio.org. There you can find more information about how to get involved and also subscribe to our podcast. Tweet your reactions to the show at rework_radio or send us an email at rework@irle.ucla.edu.
Until next time, rethink, rework.